Welcome to another OU Insider Emergency podcast. Where
second one of the week. A lot of emergencies lately.
And it's powered by Olipop. But let's just get to it. Reports, things that we can confirm through talking through sources and all of that. We expect the announcement. If you're listening to this tonight on Tuesday, November 28th, I expect an announcement by Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning at the latest. At this juncture, at least that's what I've been told up to this point. But Seth Littrell, which is a former offensive analyst, he was a former offensive coordinator at Indiana, Arizona, North Carolina, and he was a head coach at North Texas. He is now the co-OC and quarterback coach, along with tight ends coach and co-OC Joe John Finley. So there you go. Brent Venable stayed in-house.
He did. And
Oklahoma fans are a little upset a bit with this. It's kind of weird because I think it's a good hire.
I have no qualms with it. And, we'd reported as early as Sunday evening when Jeff Lebby, not long after Jeff Lebby was announced as the head coach at Mississippi State, that, okay, the two guys that are at the top of the board, two guys you watch for are Seth Littrell and Joe John Finley.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Sooners decided, okay, why not both? And both of them get OC titles. And here's what we know in talking to some sources tonight. Seth Littrell is going to be the primary play caller. He's also going to coach quarterbacks. And that, Brandon, was kind of the question that remained unanswered because I dropped some notes shortly before the announcement earlier this afternoon, because at that point I had a pretty good indication that it was going to be in-house and that it was going to be Littrell and or Finley. But the question that remained to be answered was, okay, if Littrell gets promoted to the on-field staff, who coaches quarterbacks? Because Littrell had not coached quarterbacks in his career up until this point. And Finley is obviously solidly entrenched as Oklahoma's tight ends coach. So that question was very quickly answered. A couple hours later, word gets out that the two are going to be co-OCs. I made some calls, very quickly found out, okay, Littrell's also going to coach quarterbacks. So there's a lot of new here, and I understand that's what has fans apprehensive. But in order to reassure you, here are a couple things I would say. One, all of the Sooners quarterbacks and quarterback commits are very, very excited to work with Seth Littrell. They love his mind for the game. They are all familiar with him, have a relationship with him, and he has been present and active and getting to know those guys on their visits down to Norman over the course of their respective recruitments. So no objection from the quarterbacks on Littrell being their position coach. And then as far as Joe John Finley being a co-OC is concerned, again, I think what everybody was most worried about was, okay, is he going to be the one calling plays? We know he's not. But even so, this is a guy that across the industry for the last 3-4 years has been regarded as somebody that is qualified enough, intelligent enough, and otherwise on the precipice of becoming an offensive coordinator at the Power 5 level. Whether that was going to be at Oklahoma or elsewhere, it was only a matter of time for Joe John Finley. Now he's got that title. And I feel good about it, Brandon. I do.
Yeah, so I'm pulling up Seth Littrell's bio right now just so I can read it off for Oklahoma fans. I haven't done so. Again, like I said, he was offensive coordinator at Arizona. He was offensive coordinator at Indiana, and he was offensive coordinator, assistant head coach, and tight end coach at North Carolina in 2014 and 2015. But I think the big question people have is, okay, are they going to run similar offense? Yes, but it's going to have different variations in it. And here's why I say that. number one, both Joe John and obviously Latrell worked under Josh Heupel. So they know Josh Heupel, they understand his mind, they learned from him. So you have that going for you. Joe John also worked under Lincoln Riley. He worked under Daryl Dickey, Jimbo Fisher. Um, Latrell worked under Larry Fedora as well at North Carolina, which is a brilliant offensive mind back in the day. So I think when you combine that with the Mark Mangino, Chuck Long, Mike Leach combination of everything that they're doing and what I expect them to do, I think this offense is not only going to be a similar variation to Art Briles, but I think it's going to be more of a pro style version of the Art Briles, where I would not be shocked to see some under the center. I know for a fact that Latrell and Bill Beatenbow get along so very well. I know for a fact that they have worked together on offensive line stuff. I know for a fact that during
Well,
Latrell's time at Oklahoma, he has been a shadow to Jeff Lebby. And
it's also worth noting here when you talk about the relationship with Beatenbow, they overlapped at Arizona back in the day.
correct. Yes. Yeah. So they go back. They're really, really good friends. And on top of all that, like I said, he shadowed Lebby, like was with him with the quarterbacks all the time. I just remember thinking at the OU football camps this year how Latrell and Lebby and Hallcheck were attached at the hip. Like they were like Three's Company. Everywhere they went, the three amigos were together type deal. And during that time, obviously Jackson Arnold grew very close with him. I remember asking Jackson at the camp what he thought of Latrell, just in passing, like, what do you think of Seth Latrell? I know he's an offensive analyst. He can't do a whole lot. He goes, that's one of my favorite guys. And he goes, he knows a lot about the game. He really has some good insight and sees things. He goes, I've learned a lot from him and Coach Lebby. And I thought that was an interesting thing that he said to me. So I get it. I get the questions on the quarterback coaching. I get some of that, but at the same time, I'm like, this dude's been around football for his whole life. His dad, obviously, coming through as a grad assistant, I believe at Oklahoma, if I remember correctly, he was a grad assistant, at Kansas under Mangino. Then he moved over and coached with Mike Leach from 2005 to 2008. Then moved over with Mike Stoops and all those guys. So was it Mike Stoops or was it in 2009 or was that at Arizona? Was that Rich Rod at Arizona during that time?
I believe it was still Mike Stoops at that
Was
point.
this
Or maybe that was
2009?
right at the beginning of Rich Rod. I couldn't tell you. I can't
Yeah.
recall.
Well,
I was a wee lad
Arizona
back then.
Wildcat football. Okay, I'm going to look. I remember Nick Foles was a quarterback. So that,
He sure was.
yeah, Mike Stoops. Yep. So interestingly enough, he coached Nick Foles as an OC. That's it. That's crazy. I forgot all about that. So, and I believe there was another guy there at tight end that he coached
Yes, there sure was.
by the
He's the
name
first
of
ballot of Hall of Famer these days.
Rob Gronkowski. So, I mean, the guy has some pretty stellar. He's got an amazing resume. Obviously, Joe John. He coached at A&M. He coached at Ole Miss under Lebby. He coached at Missouri under Josh Heupel. So there is, and obviously he coached at Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley and Lebby all over again. So I I want people to understand, like, Venables went into this, and I wrote about this on OU Insider, like this exact thing, Parker. Like when we were talking about when we first brought up the idea of both of those guys, and it was a combination of their ideals that Venables, from what I was being told, really, really liked. And on top of that, which I think is more important than anything, moving those two guys into the co-offensive coordinator positions kept the offensive staff together. If you don't believe that, the rumors about DeMarco Murray started to be, they heated up real quick and they got shut down real fast. The second Venables was like, from my understanding, was like, hey, look, this is how it's going to go. We're going to have this person as the co-OCs. Can you all stay with that? Boom. It was done. Like everybody. So Lebby was talking because obviously the second he was hired, instantly it went Joe John Finley, right? Like it was like Joe John Finley's going to go with him. And BV and Joe John started talking about this offensive coordinator, and Seth Littrell, as you were able to confirm through talking to a source, went from kind of not being interested to all in and really wanting the job. So I like the hire. I know people are going to look at that and go, yeah, well,
it was the easy way out, is I think what a lot of people.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're going to do. Look at all these guys. And I brought up Joey Halsley right before, like 30 minutes before the announcement happened, right? Because I spoke to a source. He was an outside source that had worked around all these people. And they were like, is BV going to hire Joey Halsley? Because that makes the most sense. And I called you and you're like, dude, how did we not think of that? And then 30 minutes later, which we had reported earlier in the day that we thought it was trending pretty quickly to the co-OC thing. But man, oh man, that Joey Halsley idea, that still sounds so sweet, doesn't it? Like it just makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. From the fact that he played football with Joe John, he played football with DeMarco. BV knows him. There's a lot of connections there, but at the same time, you also have to look at the aspect of, if you really want to shut down any chance of no turnover, you hire from within and you let it ride. The only problem is it's the SEC, baby. The SEC. You're riding right into the SEC. So I think that's more of the reservation than anything else. But from a recruiting perspective, from a staff staying together perspective, this was the easiest and safest and most logical hires.
This episode of the OU Insider Under the Visor podcast is brought to you in part by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. So instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. If you want to go with my special this week, CeeDee Lamb, the former Sooner, might be the best receiver in the NFL right now. He is hot, and I'm riding his excellence to additional winnings. The Cowboys play on Thursday Night Football against the Seahawks, and I like Lamb to end up with more than his projected reception total. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can now find community plays under the promo tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/insider and use code INSIDER for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/insider and use code INSIDER for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Manscaped is another proud sponsor of the OU Insider Under the Visor podcast. Merry Ballsmas from our friends over at Manscaped. The perfect gift does exist this holiday season. It's the Manscaped brand new Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. Included in this special sack is the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, the Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose trimmer, Manscaped's liquid formulations, and 2 free gifts. Starting with Santa's #1 helper, we have the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. This 5th generation trimmer features 2 next-gen blade heads, a standard trimmer blade for taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go for that smooth finish wherever your heart desires. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra body trimmer and the Weed Whacker 2.0 nose and ear hair trimmer feature proprietary advanced skin-safe technology to protect your delicate presence. Plus, both are waterproof, so there's no issue clearing the snow out of your driveway. And now that you've groomed the candy cane, it's time to make sure you don't smell like a reindeer with the Crop Soother Aftershave Lotion and Crop Preserver Anti-Chafe Ball Deodorant. Once they touch your sack, you'll never go back. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code OUInsider at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code OUInsider. Manscaped, get your jingle balls ready for the holidays. Yeah, without question. And I think when you approach it from the viewpoint of, okay, this is what keeps the whole staff together, then regardless of whether or not you view it as the easy way out, that alone almost makes it worth it. Because I would say it does make it worth it, because championship DNA, like if you're going to build a championship program, not just a championship team, but a championship program, one of the things you have to have is continuity on your staff. Mm-hmm. This is the way that Clemson has won national titles. This is the way, and when I say this is the way that Alabama has won national titles, probably your instant thought is, oh, how many coordinators have they had over the years? Sure, the personnel has changed, but the philosophies haven't. It has been continually plugging guys in to fill holes, but all of the principles that have made Alabama what it is as a program today have been consistent for 15 years. So stability, continuity, that's what helps get a program from good to great, from great to elite, and from elite to championship tier. And so if Oklahoma is going to get to championship tier eventually, Brandon, especially in the SEC, you have to have continuity. You have to have consistent principles and the right people at the top of the food chain to implement them and provide leadership and direction, and guys who can recruit at a high level, which every single member of this staff can do.
Yeah, I think so. I was thinking about this earlier, and Oklahoma's going into a conference that has Tennessee, Ole Miss, Mississippi State that run very similar offenses to Oklahoma, right? Like, so it's not like this one-off offense that when Levy and Heupel were originally there, a few of the SEC teams would play both of them, but for the most part, they would only play one. So it would be like this very odd system that you had to prepare for that was different than everybody else. Well, now you're going to get to see it multiple times, no matter what. And the fact that these two have so many former proteges that do different things within the spread will differentiate themselves from Heupel and his Briles-esque offense, and Levy and his Briles-esque offense, and Kiffin and his Briles-esque offense. So I think, to me, that is really important moving forward, to have a lot of variations, some different formations, some pro set looks, some 22 personnel, some 21 personnel, some 12 personnel, some 11, like just going through all those different personnels and formations and really using motion and eye candy and counters and misdirections and things that we know that
jet sweeps. You forgot jet sweeps.
No. We got those in the books, I'm sure. But the things that we know, like Heupel was really good at a lot of eye candy and setting things up and doing all that. And then obviously you have Kiffin, who is he's multiple in everything that he does because he worked under Saban. And so he took part of that system and put it into the Bryles system, and so Levy learned that, but Joe John was there to learn that as well. So I think you combine all that with the Mangino, Leach, Riley kind of spread, and I to me, I think they could have the most unique offense in the
Yeah.
SEC.
Well, and I think part of the reason why Joe John being the co-OC is so significant here is because that's the tie to the past offense and the
Mm-hmm.
future offense. Because as I reported to OU Insider members on Sunday night, on his way out the door, Levy recommended Joe John Finley as the next OC
Yep.
at Oklahoma. He said, Joe John knows the offense. He knows what I do, what we have done here. He's ready in that capacity. And having a guy like Luttrell, who has play calling experience, 5 years of it, and head coaching experience as well, like having a guy like that being your primary play caller, I think that's something that fans will have a lot more comfort with heading into the SEC. But having Finley as your co-OC means that some of those philosophical and conceptual staples of the Levy offense
Mm-hmm.
aren't going to go away.
Yep.
They can be implemented into Oklahoma's new scheme going forward. And obviously it's more than Levy's, it's going to be Luttrell's offense. Like there's going to be a transition there, but you're going to see some of those fingerprints, some of those familiar fingerprints on the new Oklahoma offense, which I think is great because for the players, the system that they've been learning the last 2 years, everything that they've become acquainted with as far as offensive principles, yeah, it'll evolve, but it's not going to go away. It's an easier transition in that capacity because Luttrell and Finley can build the playbook together and they can find a way to innovate and bring new concepts to the table and kind of imprint their own DNA into the offense, but also maintain some of what has helped Oklahoma be so successful and so prolific offensively the last 2 years under Jeff Levy's direction.
Yeah, and I think you can look at what Mangino did to Leach's offense in 2000 through 2000 and 2001, and then what Chuck Long did to Mangino and Leach's offense from 2002 to 2006, and then what Kevin Wilson did with all those guys' offense, and he brought in his Northwestern offense that he had ran. Obviously, he was an offensive line coach prior to that, but he made Oklahoma more physical. Then he threw the no huddle in there and the spread with the physicality. And Oklahoma ran that under Heupel, and before Heupel switched over to the Browns. And let's not get it twisted. There's a lot of conceptual, similarities between what Kevin Wilson did at Oklahoma and what Heupel's doing at Tennessee, but he's mixed in all of that with Bryles stuff as well. And that's what I mean by being so unique, is that both those guys have so many different, really elite offensive minds that they can cherry pick from and find stuff that works and combine it into their own little system. And I think you got a quarterback like Jackson Arnold moving forward. It could be pretty special if you can just solidify the offensive line. You got your running back, right? Or running backs. And I do think one thing, two things real quick. There's one person that's happier than pig in the mud right now. Who would that person be right now?
I don't know. Is it bad that
They
I don't
both
know? Should I
they
know?
both coached this position.
Oh, Devon Mitchell.
I was thinking Austin Stogner for the bowl game. That dude could have a record-setting day.
Oh, okay. I mean,
they're like,
yeah, for the
we're
bowl game,
going,
sure.
we're throwing to the tight end, baby. Two tight end coaches. I mean,
Austin
the tight
Stogner
end's
has
going to get
17
used.
catches this year. Does he double that in the bowl game?
That would be hilarious. Obviously, he's not going to, but if he
No.
could get if he could get 5, 6, 7 catches in the bowl game, that would be just top notch, and just show to guys like Devon Mitchell that hey, they got their back, got his back, and that's the type of offense they're going to use the tight end the way Oklahoma used it up until this year. Like this has been such a weird year for tight end usage, and I think a lot of it has to do we've discussed it. Willis was an outside tight end, Stogner's an over the middle tight end, and DG just whatever. And my second point is, what does this do for Dylan Gabriel? Does he finish the season out? Like, I expect him to, and I've heard he's going to up to this point. But this gets interesting, right? Levy's gone. You got 1 year left. You're probably going to stick around and use that last year. And if you were a betting man, is he back at Oklahoma or is he playing for Mississippi State? Just if I was going to bet
Are
you.
those my only two options?
Okay. Oklahoma, Mississippi State, the field, or the NFL. Those are your options.
I still say the NFL.
Okay.
I still say the NFL. Just my gut. No intel, just my gut.
There you go. But it still is interesting. Like, what's his plans now?
Sure.
Because it's gotten really different. And everybody kind of knows that Latrell and Jackson are super tight. I don't know Dylan's relationship. I'm assuming it's pretty tight with him, but I mean, this is an intriguing scenario moving forward for the bowl game for Oklahoma. Does the fact that they have Jackson, they have Hawkins, and they have Sperry lined up, is that kind of a saving grace for Latrell that he doesn't have to go out and just win the day to start out? He can take his time, get to know some 26 guys, and really start to get his footing on how he's going to recruit at the quarterback position.
Certainly, Brandon, and this was actually something I talked about on Quick Slants over on the YouTube channel with Jesse, is that you're welcome to have your own feelings about Jeff Lebby's tenure as Oklahoma's offensive coordinator. You can have your beef with his philosophies and his situational play calling. That's all fine. Like I'm not going to try to talk you down from that. If you wanted to be critical of the way that Lebby ran the offense, what you cannot take away from him is that before he left, he set the Sooners up immaculately with regard to the quarterback room for the next 4 to 5 years. Because you have Jackson Arnold, that was a Lebby recruitment all the way. You have Michael Hawkins, that was a Lebby recruitment all the way. Brendan Zurbrugg, same deal. Kevin Sperry, you can make the argument he's committed to Oklahoma regardless of who the coordinator is. But even so, all guys that Lebby was primarily responsible for recruiting. And you have studs lined up at signal caller every single cycle from this past cycle, 2023 in Arnold, through 2025. And so that quarterback position, Brandon, you can forget about it for 5 years. Man, you're set. And obviously they're not going to forget about it. They're going to continue to recruit, and they're going to start evaluating 2026 guys and eventually 2027s. And so there will be care and attention given to that quarterback room. But even so, that is the one thing as an OU fan that you have to give flowers to Jeff Lebby for, is that in the 2 years that he was at Oklahoma, before he walked out the door, he left OU in brilliant shape as far as their signal callers of the future.
Yeah. Totally agree. And on that note, you and I we talked about this with the Peyton Bowen situation. I don't know, several months ago, and throughout that whole recruitment, how much Lebby meant to that recruitment, right? Yeah. Like NIL, I don't think they're going to have any slippage on the defensive side of the ball because I know kind of who heads that, I
Uh-huh.
guess. And
Sure.
but it was always felt like Levy headed, the push. Um, Kind of like you've got to play the game on the
Yep.
offensive side of the ball.
Yep.
Does Joe John take over that?
I don't know. And I don't think that's immediately clear.
Yeah,
Doesn't seem like there's anybody as far as the commits are concerned that are all too worried about that though. I'll say that much. And
yeah.
man, I got the chance to talk to Michael Hawkins and his folks tonight. Uh they love them some Seth Luttrell.
Hmm.
Love Seth Luttrell. And that was that was kind of the guy that they wanted. They were cool with Luttrell or Finley, but uh Luttrell is somebody that has really made an impression on Mike and his family amongst the myriad of visits that he has taken up to Norman over the course of his recruitment. And obviously, you mentioned how tight his relationship is with Jackson Arnold, and the odds are those are the next two starting quarterbacks at the University of Oklahoma, regardless of what the timeline is when
Yeah.
as to when the transition happens between Arnold and Hawkins. But those it's pretty safe to say are the two next starting quarterbacks at OU, and both of them are completely in lockstep with Luttrell as far as learning underneath him, trusting him with their development, and when you have buy-in from your quarterbacks, granted, quarterback is the most important position on the field. It is. It's cliche, but it's true. And so that's a great place to start with this OC hire. And part of the reason why I think it makes so much sense, even though some may regard it as unsexy or uninspiring. Look, please don't fall into the trap of letting yourself get down about this hire or feeling like the Sooners didn't do their due diligence or feel like this is a move made in haste without all factors considered. Because if your argument against this hire is it's not splashy enough, it's meh, it's blah, well, then you're thinking along the same lines as the folks down in College Station. Don't be like those folks.
Hmm. Yeah. It, and then they ended up with Elko, who I said was going to be the head coach to begin with, but just by sheer luck, I ended up being right because it was supposed to be Stoops. Um,
Apparently, Stoops wasn't sexy enough, but Elko
that wasn't
was.
sexy enough, but Mike Elko was. That is whatever. All right. And I talked to somebody today about that, and like nobody knows who's going to be retained and who's not outside of Elijah Robinson being kind of the given because
Yeah.
he's still the interim head coach for the bowl. So, and I said, did the culture change any? And they said, well, a little bit, but it's going to take a lot. And I just, I don't understand, and I don't think I ever will, this mentality of why the splash? Why do fans feel like if it's not somebody that is like this hot name, it's not a good hire. And
Yeah.
you look at, if they're a hot name and they're a coordinator elsewhere, chances are they're up for a head coaching job. Sean Lewis, Brendan Marion, like that's just how it works. Lincoln
Well,
Riley was an up and comer at a G5 program, and I know I'm bringing up bad mojo there by saying this,
sure.
but he wasn't the hottest of hot names. At that point, it was Sonny Cumby, and he was at TCU and he was killing it.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, didn't they just like get kind of screwed out of going to the playoffs, if I remember correctly? So you had that. You got Sonny Cumby, what he did, and they hired a G5 guy because it was more sustainable in Bob Stoops' mind, and it worked out for 7 years. And Next thing you know, they screw. That is the rest of the zero. Barry Switzer had zero play calling when he got hired. Turned out to be pretty good
It
in the long
did.
run for
And
Oklahoma.
here's what every fan must understand
Dabo.
and must be mindful of amongst all of this discourse is you need to consider the two folks that are more involved in this process than anybody else, and that would be Brent Venables and Joe Castiglione.
Yeah.
And I would simply ask how many of Joe Castiglione's football hires haven't worked out, and how many of Brent Venables' hires in the short time he's been at Oklahoma have not worked out. So if you trust those two with the future of the Oklahoma football program, there is no reason not to trust that Seth Littrell and Joe John Finley are the two guys that make sense to lead and spearhead Oklahoma's offensive attack going forward.
I love. I like it. I like the hires. I'm just gonna say that. All right. We've been on here for a good 30 minutes, so I don't think there's very much more we can really dive into. I think
We
we've
will
covered.
dive into it more on OU Insider
Yeah,
Live,
we
no
got the live
doubt.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Or today, depending on when you listen
exactly.
to this.
Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. That's always when we do OU Insider Live over on the YouTube channel. So come tune in with us.
Yeah, National Signing Day is rolling around. Transfer portals here. There's I don't want to say there's more coaching stuff that's going to happen, but because I don't know that to be a fact, but there's always the off chance that more coaching stuff could go down. I mean, you never know. This is with everything that's happening in the world of college football. It's always good to be on OU Insider, right? Like we're going to have you covered no matter what takes place within the Oklahoma program, within the transfer portal, within the recruiting realm. There's the bowl rolling around as well. And then there's the All American games. There's the post transfer portal, the post bowl transfer portal uh, swing as well that we're going to have you covered on. There's the move to the SEC. There's the spring game. There's spring practices. There's junior days. There's all the officials, the unofficial visits during the spring and summer, the champion barbecue, the party in the palace, the fall camp. Parker and I are going to be out and about traveling all over from January all the way to the end of June. So we're going to have you covered with so much information, off-season team stuff. And if you missed the Black Friday sale, if you missed it, it was 75% off. We're coming back at you. We got 50% off this time. $44 gets you all the way through. From now all the way to whatever date you sign up, it ends on December 1st at 5 p.m. So if you haven't signed up by December 1st, 5 p.m., you miss out on it. But you could have all the way through the SEC season. OU's inaugural SEC season just by signing up. You get half off right now. We set the record for Rivals signups this past Black Friday. Thanks to you guys, you Oklahoma fans, you Sooners fans. We feel so blessed because of that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But we're trying to stay hot here. We're trying to get as many people as we can to join us on top of all this because we're trying to give deals out here. The more deals, the more better for you. And 50% off right now. 50% off. A little over $45 will get you right now. OUinsider.com for a whole year. Come join us. We'd love to have you on there. I can't wait to see you guys on OU Insider. And thank you to all the members that signed up. There were several hundreds that signed up. And thank you for signing up. And y'all joined thousands and thousands of guys already. Sooner fans already on there. So also subscribe to this channel right here, YouTube channel. Give us 5 stars on whatever podcasting platform you listen to us on. And we will see you guys on Wednesday, November 29th for the YouTube Live. So for Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed day. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Emergency Podcast Part 2 as Seth Littrell and Joe John Finley become co-OCs for the University of Oklahoma.
Last
Peace.
emergency for a while. We're hoping.
Hoping.